Hello, everyone. I'm here today to share part number 7 out of my book, Why Do You Love Me? My name is Mike Stein, and I wanted to share a little bit about a time in my life that was a downtime. It was a time where I had transgressed, the things of the Lord. I was having difficulty in my relationships, my family, my wife. Many of these things that were wrong were my own fault. They were my own transgressions. They were my own lack of prioritizing what it was that the Lord was trying to do in my life. And not that I was entirely at fault, but I certainly shouldered my half of the problems. And many Christians go through these things. People suffer through aspects of their life, and they have guilt, and they have doubt, and they have despair, and where is God, and all of this. I've been through that, okay? And what I noticed was that very profoundly one day, I came out of this because of my mother. I was down in the basement of her house working out after my marriage fell apart. And these were terrible times in my life, and I was taking it out all on myself. And my mother saw that I had lost my joy as a Christian, my testimony. Many of the things that God had built up in my life were put on hold. And so she came to me and she said, "Michael, you were a man of celebration. And you used to celebrate life itself. You didn't celebrate an event because a blessed thing came along. You made blessed things happen because you were celebrating life all the time." And she said, "And you lost that celebration. You ought to make it a priority getting it back." And she said, "I'm not going to talk anymore about this." She said, "I'm just letting you know clearly, okay, that this should be an issue of concern for you." And she went upstairs, and I thought about this, and I said, you know what? She's right. Why should I give up my joy in life and my lack of celebration because things went awry? I transgressed. I have a lot to be forgiven for. But so do other people. It takes two to tango, as they say, and this was certainly true in my case. So I decided to look at this thing a totally different way, and I took celebration and the quest for regaining it very seriously. I finished working out, I went up, I got dressed up, showered up, and I said, I'm taking myself out to dinner, and I'm going to just celebrate life. Just me and dinner, and that's it. And I went out to this place that I had liked to go to in my downtime, where it was depressing, because you go to these places to drink and carry on and get depressed, and you're wasting your life. But I went there this time and I said, but I'm going there to celebrate, and I'm going to buy myself dinner. And I went there. I sat down at the bar of this place in New Jersey, and I'm sitting there, and I ordered dinner, and I was enjoying dinner, and a very pretty young girl came up to me and started talking to me. And I explained to her very carefully, that I'm here to celebrate, life itself, and I'm just not into looking for any relationships with anyone right now. And, I tried to explain it and let her down, nicely, that this was about a personal issue. Well, she turned around and left in a huff, of course. And when I turned to my right, to my other side, another woman was sitting there, and I wound up starting to talk with her, and suddenly things were entirely different. I said certain things to her. I made her blush. It was her whole demeanor and behavior. This was a lady. This was somebody that that was different. It was not a pickup at a bar or something like that. This was just a very nice person. And I enjoyed her company up until the point that they suddenly said, well, we're closing. It's 2 a.m. and we're closing. And that's the way that we left. And I realized, a whole big period of my life has just gone by, and it just went by in a flash. And who is this person, right? And from that day on, from the very time that I thought about celebration, I had met my Susan that way, and my life was transformed. I was reestablished. I was given a family again, and a responsibility to care for them, and do mutual things as families do, in ways that were pretty astounding. I mean, if you look at our track record together over the years, it's been a wonderful thing and a wonderful experience for me, a wonderful life. And it was given to me on one day with one kind word that told me to seek out celebration again, which has been with me now for over 35 years. This is a powerful thing, how one word can transform your life if you have an ear to hear it. And I'm talking about where the rubber meets the road in the realities of life that we all experience. You couldn't have gotten me any more down than I was, and you couldn't have transformed me any higher as a human being than I am. So this was a phenomenal thing. So that was around 1983, and by 1984, or rather 1986, Susan and I wound up expecting our first child. We were married, dated, married, whatever, and I wasn't really expecting any more children because she had 2 children. I had 2 children from my previous marriage. And lo and behold, she became pregnant, and we were expecting our first child together that was born on August the 21st, 1986. And his name was also Michael. Susan decided to name him after me. And what had happened was, on the day before his birth, that was the 20th of August, I went to sleep, and when I went to sleep, I wound up in a dream where the Lord spoke to me. And he said, the umbilical cord is wrapped around his neck twice, and he showed me a vision inside the womb of Susan with kind of a very bright red background, and I could see my son, a baby, inside of her. Just an amazing thing. It's just like better than an x-ray because it was in color type of thing. And I could see the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck twice. And this was a very profound thing. So then I was shown the vision again and told the same thing again. And shown the vision from a different angle, a different perspective, so that I could see that this was a child in her womb. And of course, now Michael was due to be born the next day. And I was just really perplexed. I was challenged. I was being confronted with a reality about this. Well, the next day, we wound up going on our way into Philadelphia from Marlton, New Jersey. We traveled into Philadelphia to go to the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, which is what my wife wanted to do. And she had all the symptoms, the child was coming, and all the typical things that you go through when a child is being born. We were ready to go, but the whole time within myself, I'm seeing this vision over and over again. I'm trying to understand the significance of this, but it only has one significant meaning, and that is this child has the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck twice and he's about to be born. Well, we got to the hospital, got situated. Susan got hooked up to the monitors and all that, and everything was going along well. And the vision started to reoccur to me then. I'm awake and coherent. I'm, at my best. I couldn't be any more involved than I was. Yet at another level, I was seeing these visions again. So I figured, well, what am I going to do? Well, the doctor had come in and he had gone to sleep. And then the nurse that was on duty was available, and she was a very light-hearted Christian woman who went about singing and just enjoying every little thing she was doing. And I found her to be very easy to speak to, and I said to her, I've got to share something with you. I had a vision last night, twice, that the Lord spoke to me and said that the umbilical cord's wrapped around my son's neck twice. And she said, well, everything looks fine. And I said, things may look fine, but are we going to wait to put our faith into action when it's too late? Or is there something we can do now to help things, initiate things in a way that's safe so that he doesn't go through strangulation being born? And she said, well, let me go check the machines, which she did. She went in, she checked the machines, she comes back and she says, Mike, everything's fine. I said, everything isn't fine. I said, I'm having this vision during the daytime with you right here. The vision is there. I'm living in this vision and I can't shake it off. And she said to me, Michael, let me see if I can get you a little bit of suction, she said. And I said, what does that mean? So she said, I'm going to go get the doctor. So she leaves and she goes in, wakes the doctor up, and asked him about this scenario with suction. He agrees to it, and she comes back and says, yeah, the doctor's coming out. They're going to do a procedure, and let me check with your wife to make sure that this is okay to induce the labor and move things along. So she goes in, she checks with Susan, who I did not tell anything about this. Okay, because I didn't want her worrying or get exciting or think that something was wrong when it was needless to do it. It was up to me to do something in faith, not her. Otherwise, the Lord should have given her the vision, right? Well, the nurse comes back and says, yep, everything's going to be set. We're going to get her all prepped and whatever. So the doctor eventually comes on board. And he brings another doctor with him who he's going to teach this procedure, which involved putting what looks like a silver-handled toilet plunger, literally like for plunging a toilet. And it has the rubber end, but it has a stainless steel silver stem on it for, to be in it so that it could be, sterilized. They proceeded with the procedure. They put this plunger up inside of Susan, who had dilated a number of centimeters. It hadn't been quite enough, and so they were kind of being preemptive with this procedure. And they put it up inside. It attached to my son's head, and they took and pulled him out of the womb. And in the process of doing that, the umbilical cord broke. And when it came out, the other doctor, who didn't know about the whole issue of the umbilical cord being wrapped around the neck twice. I mean, I had told the nurse, but I went further in having told the doctor before he started that the reason for my concern was because of the umbilical cord, which he dismissed. He went in, checked the monitors, whatever. He said, no, everything looks good. And I said, well, everything looks good, but everything isn't good. So when the other doctor who didn't know about this said, oh, look at that, the umbilical cord. It's wrapped around twice. I said, "Excuse me, let me just interrupt. What did you just say? How many times is the umbilical cord around his neck?" And she said, "Twice." And then I looked at my doctor, and he said, "Yeah, Mike, it was twice." And when he's looking at me, his eyes are bouncing up and down between his mask and his eyebrows. And this is a picture of him with his mask on, holding Michael, and the black nurse, who's, at this point, she's absolutely overjoyed with the idea that her faith had something to do with saving this boy's life. And the doctor was so nervous about this, his eyes were just fluttering between his mask and his eyebrows. And fortunately, in the picture, you can see he left his mask on, so you can get an idea of what it was I was talking about. Well, the nurse whisked Michael away, and they start doing the evaluation and the checks on the newborn to make sure. And of course, I followed right after that because I was concerned that he was okay. I mean, this was traumatic, extra trauma for him that he went through at birth that other people don't go through. And she checked him out and said, "Boy, everything looks good on him. He's lively. His coloration is looking really good. So his circulation and everything was fine." And she was just elated. And I said to her, "So what do you think about my vision now?" And she said, "Michael is a real miracle baby." And she said, "I told the doctor that, and he is very nervous and upset, and he's looking to get out of here as quick as he can because he's trying to run away from this," which is a normal reaction if you're not expecting God to do something that you're a part of and you're not ready for it. Well, she also came up and she said to me, "Michael's a miracle baby. Sometimes God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes he just do whatever he wants." And this was one of those times where I was experiencing the restoration of my life, the acceptance of my spiritual well-being. God intervening to help me and my son, who we had a wonderful relationship going down through the years. And I enjoyed every minute of it. And that joy is the joy that he gave me because I accepted the word of celebration. God gave me something to celebrate life for, in addition to all the other things he restored to me. My wife, my other kids, all the endeavors and things that we shared together, the challenges that we went through together. It was really a full restoration of all of those things that challenged us to the measure of our souls, that we worked together through life and to come to the place where we are now, retired and enjoying our grandchildren. This is a wonderful thing. Now, in subsequent years, my son grew up. He's now about 12 years old, and the story of his birth is one of the stories in my book, and it's called God's Gracious Gift. Okay, it's a vision of my son's birth, and how I had to react by faith in it to secure his life. The next one involves things that I began to notice about Michael, that what was coming out of him and his creativity, his sensitivity to things, were just astounding to me. They taught me many lessons over the years. But this particular story is about, I call the life preserver. It's also in my book. And this is another story that had been published before in a book of short stories. The life preserver was just about one of the activities that we did all the time in metal detecting the beach and in fishing down at the shore. Now, we live in New Jersey, so it was just logical for us to spend some time down the shore doing the things that we liked. And while one of us would fish, the other person would metal detect, and then we'd switch off. So it was never a dull moment. But this one particular day was a different day. We got down the shore, we had all of our stuff. It was a beautiful day. The surf was really up, the waves were large. It was a beautiful warm day, so the people were staying on the beach. And we waited until the lifeguards had actually left the beach. And so we could metal detect the beach. And we're having a problem this particular day because I'm sitting there and I decided to read. And I kept telling my son, go ahead, go down and go for a swim. And he turned around and said, well, I'd rather stay here with you and just dig a hole, which he kept digging and digging and digging. He's well down into this hole. His whole body is down there and his head is sticking up next to me. And I guess in a way he's trying to get my attention, but he never asked me to do anything. He just was industriously working away. 2 other boys had come with their parents. They watched him for a bit and then they decided, well, let's go for a swim. They went down and they were swimming. And I'm now getting a little disturbed with my son because he's still digging this hole. He's all full of sand. I said, why don't you get up and go down with the other boys down there and have some fun, get some swim time, get out of that hole. I said, look, those other boys are having fun. He said, Dad, they're not having fun. They're screaming for help and everybody's ignoring them. Well, the boys were there with their parents who were right in front of me about, 10 yards away. And I'm looking at the parents, I'm looking at the boys out there, and he says, Michael says, can't you hear that? They're screaming for help. And then when I'm looking at the boys, they start waving frantically at me, and I realized these kids, Michael can hear it, but nobody else could. So I jumped up, I told the parents, your boys are in trouble out there. And the father looked and jumped up, and we went down to the edge of the water, and the boys were pretty far out now in a riptide, and they were trying to work against it. The younger boy, who was about 10 years old, the older boy was maybe 16. The older boy was trying to help his brother, but it was just too much of a burden, and they weren't making any progress getting back in. So I told the father that they have to get over to the right and get out of the riptide and work laterally and not try to swim against it because it will never work. And he started to holler at them. In the meantime, there were 2 young men in a 2-man kayak that were surfing those larger waves that were a far distance off to my left. And I took my booming voice and I hollered to get the attention of those boys who heard me right away. And they started coming in, and I gestured for them to come toward me. Then I pointed out to where the boys were in the riptide. And so they didn't have to come real far in. They didn't have to come in and talk to me personally. I just wanted them to get out to the boys. They understood this quickly, and they made their way over and picked up the younger boy who was at his end. They were in water over their head, and they were being carried out further. And they put the young boy on the kayak in between them. And they were trying to paddle with the older boy holding on to the end of the kayak. But that wasn't working. They weren't making any progress either. So the older boy let go of the kayak, understood what the father was trying to say about getting over to the right, to move over and get out of the the riptide. And that he was able to do that and find his way back to where he could, work his way in back toward the beach again. And the father jumped in and swam out to help him. And everybody together made it to the beach and collapsed, including the kayakers. They were spent in trying to do the rescue because they were actually trying to paddle against the riptide. I'm standing there and I'm looking at this and I'm just amazed by how much of a difference it made for Michael's observation of what had happened with those boys. He saved those boys' lives. If he had died in childbirth, those boys would have drowned, because Michael wouldn't have been there to hear it, even if I was at the beach. And one thing led to another. Well, Michael, I looked down at him and he was standing there and he said, "Dad, this is a weird day." And I said to him, "Yes, son, this is a weird day." Then, a few months later, we came back from that, and a few months later, I had a dream. And I dreamed this day again. I went to the beach. Michael did his normal thing. He went down and went for a swim. The other people came, and when I looked up and looked out for Michael, he was nowhere in sight. And I woke up in a startle and I realized that I was having a dream about the fact that he had nobody that could hear him when he was hollering for help. And so he went out into the riptide and he drowned. He didn't have a weird day. He had the normal day, which would have cost him his life. And the Lord intervened in mysterious ways. People get these interactions with the angelic and the move of the Holy Spirit that prompts us into doing certain things and taking up certain positions in our life and in our heart that make a difference with a subtle, small thing. Just like my mother and her advice about celebration. It has been with me all my life since the day she said that. Well, these are the two stories I wanted to share. When I had the dream, I got up and I realized that I had to write the story and I had to share it. The story subsequently was published in a hardbound book of short stories, widely circulated. It was funny, I went to the library with my son once when he had to do, find a book for something. And while I was there, I was looking through books and I saw the hardbound book in the library. And I opened it up in the library and I reread that story. It's amazing how things will circulate and come around in your life and come right back to you to say, "Well done, Mike. You were obedient in what you did, and there's a progression in this that will work throughout your life, one after the other, if you're faithful to each." So I'm trying to be faithful, and that's part of the reason why I'm sharing this story. This is the conclusion of part 7, with part 8, coming up soon. And I want to ask the Lord to bless you and to restore you and to bring celebration into your life the way that He has mine. Better than mine. If I can challenge the Lord in that regard, He's perfectly capable of doing amazing and wonderful things if you yield your heart to Him and believe in Jesus for who He is, our Redeemer and our faithful Lord, who is closer than a brother.